Hello and welcome to the Guest EdTech Virtual Summit Dubai. We're pleased to introduce you to Olly Lewis, Assistant Head Teacher, Teaching and Learning at the Nord Anglia, the British International School, Abu Dhabi. We hope you enjoy the session, and over to you, Olly.
Hi everybody, thank you for having me. I hope you've had a brilliant day so far at the Guest EdTech Virtual Summit. I'm really excited to share with you today my presentation titled Ensuring an Equitable and Flexible Digital Strategy. As was mentioned, I work at the British International School of Abu Dhabi, and I'm really excited to share the work that we've done with you. You can find me on social media through the various channels that you can see on the slide deck. I'm at olewis_coaching on Twitter. I have a blog, as you can see there, and Instagram, and I also am the co-founder and co-host of Learn Live UAE, which is a weekly chat, Monday nights, 8 p.m. GST, focusing on all things education. So without further ado, let me delve into my presentation. I think one of the hallmarks of the start of any digital strategy within schools must be your strategic vision. You need to have charted a path of where you want to get to, but alongside that, you need to clearly articulate and communicate that with all of the stakeholders in your school so they know what you're intending to do, why you're intending to do that, and then what it should look like once you reach certain checkpoints along that route. Okay, so that vision is clearly shared and people know which direction they're going in and can get on the bus as you go there together. As is any change in schools, it might feel initially like you have a nice straight road ahead of you and you can make huge gains in a short period of time as you start to chart the path which you have been planning within your schools. But we know that through both either things that we know might crop up or things that are unknowns to us, your path might change at any moment in time within your school. And I think a key part for this within your teams is not only looking forwards, but also looking back to identify how far you've come. And as you start to identify the road ahead in front of you, you also need to start planning for any occurrence. For example, here you can see this road has been covered by sand dunes, and it doesn't take too long in this part of the world for a sandstorm to cause large change in not only our sort of day-by-day lives, but on a macro scale, on a micro scale, how our journey might actually need to be re-navigated. And planning for any potentiality, I think, is a hugely important part for your digital strategy team. Something else to be mindful of is the Kubler-Ross change curve. Any change in school can have a moral, as well as a competence, as well as a well-being turning point within the school. And as you can see in this diagram here, it's important to be mindful of the emotions that members of staff, your students, possibly even your parents might go through as a direct result of change management within your schools through the initiation and working on your school digital strategy. So something to be mindful of here is touch points throughout the year when certain stakeholders may be feeling some of these particular emotions. And what actions are you going to take to ensure that we can move everybody through to more positive mindsets and align everybody to our common goal? Something that I've read and I've been really fortunate enough to feature twice in version 2, and it's helped guide my thinking, is 2 fantastic documents around creating digital strategies within education, written by Mark Anderson and Al Kingsley. You can find these at www.schooldigitalstrategy.com, and I would thoroughly urge you to download them, digest them, and share them amongst your school community. So who are the key stakeholders when it comes to an equitable and a flexible digital strategy? Well, anything that we do in schools should always be mindful of teachers, but also most importantly, the students. and outcomes for students, because we want to give the students the best possible education that we can to set them up for their future lives. But also within that, we have teaching and learning team across the school. We have the IT infrastructure, along with the network manager and his or her team. Not to mention how data privacy and data retention is managed across your site, along with your safeguarding leads, senior leadership team, and then the school's professional development. And there are so many different areas here that are a part of digital governance in our schools. So it's mindful to ensure that all of these different facets within your school play a part in your digital strategy. In order to promote that practice of pursuit of quality, equity and flexibility, it's key that we have the mindset of researcher, as well as that exploration phase and that collective reflection, and a shift in ethos from hierarchical through to collaborative, whilst we are on our journey and focusing on the responsibility, which is everybody within a school. Much like it's every teacher's responsibility to teach literacy, it's every stakeholder in schools' responsibility to ensure efficient digital governance. So aligning across your school is hugely important when it comes to digital governance. But that's all great and well, but how does that actually work in reality? Well, the analogy that I'd like to use is that of a swan. A swan is effortless, graceful, above the surface, a vision and picture of beauty. But underneath the surface, the swan is paddling furiously. And much like the swan within our schools, there'll be lots and lots of people working behind the scenes, completing a vast plethora of tasks to ensure the success of a digital strategy, because there are so many interlinking parts. And I feel like this is a great analogy for a school's digital strategy, because what we show on the outside, the top of the surface, doesn't always reflect all of the amazing work that's gone on across horizontally and vertically through all of the different teams across a school, like underneath the surface of the water. But it would be remiss of me to not actually also include the Trojan horse analogy here. I think it's also key that you involve the naysayers in your digital strategy, because those that are not necessarily massive proponents for technology will keep you on track, they'll keep you honest. And I think that it's hugely important, if we're talking about visions and values, to make sure that we do include every potential person across our school, and the digital naysayer is also one of them. So I think their voice also needs to be heard. So what about equity then? Well, as you can see, this image on the left, we can see we have a plethora of different colours, and they're all at slightly different heights. And when it comes to technology in schools, everybody has different competencies and capabilities, but they also have different needs. So we could take the competencies as the heights of all of the different blocks, and the needs as the different colours of the different blocks. So simply put, equity is about fairness, okay, which is not necessarily the same as equality. I think it's important with your digital strategy that everyone gets what they need in order to improve the quality of their situation, whether it's students and their learning or ease of access for teachers. There are so many different areas that we can delve into on that, and sadly I don't have the time. But in terms of equity then, it really does encompass everybody in your school community, whether that be staff, whether that be governors, students, parents, admin, support staff, everybody, Therefore, the purpose of our digital strategy is to foster equity for everybody. And everyone will need something slightly different across your school real estate. And whilst you may have seen this image on the right on various social media channels, I think if we can find a balance in that central image on the right-hand side for equity, to ensure that we are purposeful in our digital strategy and the various stakeholders get exactly what they need to help level the playing field, okay, and to help your digital strategy be equitable across your school. Now, I'm not saying, let's all buy everybody a headset. I'm not saying that this is an opportunity to plug into the matrix either. Technology, we have to remember, is not the goal, okay, but it is actually a utility. And whenever you're thinking from a teaching and learning perspective, it's, as Higgins has said, pedagogy matters most. So whatever the decision you make, we need to make sure that from a teaching perspective, it's the pedagogy of the application of technology in the classroom that's most important. It's the how rather than the what. And sometimes that might mean that technology is not the appropriate thing to use within a classroom setting. And it's simply about making the right choices so that your staff are informed from a pedagogical stance point using technology as to what the best decision is for them in their classroom with their students, because they are the best people to answer that question because they know the students the best. And quite often you hear people refer to either SAMIR, okay, or either TPAC models, but I think it's about having a solid knowledge of both, because they both inform one another and they help teachers and digital strategy groups be led by informed decisions that can reinforce these models together, because teachers have a vastly brilliant pedagogical knowledge along with a content knowledge taken from the TPAC model. And if we can upskill staff technological knowledge, then they're more likely to find that sweet spot in the middle of the TPAC model. And that then helps them to make informed decisions regarding the use of technology in their classroom, where they might start to move from standard tasks through to redefining, as described in the SABA model, their classroom practice. So here's an infographic that I just placed together, which shows you, different activities across the curriculum that involve a reflection on either, both the SAMIR and the TPAC model from a pedagogical stance point. And it's about how you start going about using the tools in a format that you may not have used them previously. And it could be something as simple as, from a curriculum activity viewpoint, collaborating on notes in OneNote. If you've never done that before, you're redefining how you work as a team. So in terms then of making use of research and resources that are out there, not only should we strive to share amongst ourselves, but there are some fantastically free resources out there, such as this one from the Education Endowment Foundation. This is the summary of recommendations from their Using Digital Technology to Improve Learning reports. And we just go through the 4 recommendations they have. Recommendation 1 says to consider how technology will improve teaching and learning before introducing it. And this is where reflection is hugely important. Quite often new technology can be exciting, but will it lead to actually the learning intentions that you're seeking? The second recommendation is that technology can be used to improve the quality of explanations and modelling, through a simple piece of equipment like the visualizer, something that may not have been visible to all students in a classroom at any one point in time, can now be broadcast across multiple devices through your various systems across the school, and each student can actually see what the teacher is doing far easier than previously. So In terms of implementing technology, it's key then to allow your staff and your teams to explore new concepts, new ideas, and new ways of working to help their instruction. The third recommendation is that it can offer ways to improve the impact of pupil practice. And as we start to move through these examples, we start to delve into the hallmarks of effective teaching and learning. We've just looked at modelling and instruction, and we're now looking at pupil practice, considering retrieval practice. So technological tools can provide such a rich resource for teachers that if you take a tool such as quizzes or Century Tech, they can mark an entire class set of work in an absolute instant, feed that data back to the teacher so that the teacher can then spend more time working on their explanations, reteaching concepts, or filling in any knowledge gaps that the students may have, rather than taking all of those quizzes back and marking them that night before they can get to that point. So it offers a really versatile, along with efficient and effective way of working for teachers that aids the student in the long run, because it reduces the gap or the time for that feedback to be passed on to them. Recommendation 4 then, technology can play a role in improving assessment and feedback. And I've kind of spoken a little bit about that there in terms of reducing the time differential that we typically see in schools. And through making these informed decisions, the potential that technology has is huge, and it's there as a tool to support and enhance the amazing work that teachers are already doing, and improve their fluency, along with their efficiency and effectiveness. And if we step then to other well-renowned teaching and learning books, for example, here we've got Andy Tharby and Sean Allison's Making Every Lesson Count book, 6 Principles to Support Great Teaching and Learning. They say that expert teaching requires challenge, explanation, and modelling, because these promote high challenge. They promote students acquiring knowledge and skills, along with the application of those through modelling, so that students can then be made to not only think hard, but actually develop their knowledge through a scaffolded approach to deliberate practice. And again, these are all hallmarks of excellent teaching and learning. And I think that the Education Endowment Foundation summary recommendations is just further highlighting how technology can actually aid and support all of these different aspects within our classroom. And slightly more recently then, we go back to the Education Endowment Foundation, and then Remote Learning Rapid Assessment from April 2020 concluded that the quality of teaching is more important than how the lessons are actually delivered. So we know that students can learn through a blended approach, or online learning, or hybrid learning, whichever lexicon you'd like to reference around that. We know that technology can enhance our teaching, and it provides that opportunity for quality teaching. Not only that, we know that it can, certainly in this part of the world, access to technology is we're very fortunate in that sense. So it enables that equity through our schools, where students can reach the teacher and reach the learning thanks to technology. And as we've probably all experienced in the past few months, whether you're on Teams or Zoom and you're playing interaction bingo, as it were, it provides that pathway for connection and collaboration, which we know is so rich and important in our schools. And whilst it might not be the same as having everybody in the classroom in front of you, it does provide that pathway for the students. So as we sort of delve into any research, we can see then that technology and the hallmarks for effective teaching and learning are the same, essentially, whether we're face-to-face, blended, or hybrid. And with that in mind, here's an infographic that I shared from my school way back when at the start of lockdown. And here we've got 9 recommendations for our staff, which are underpinned by effective teaching and learning. So my question to you is this: how is your school supporting this? At BISAD, our hybrid approach enabled staff to foster synchronous and asynchronous tasks through and underpinned by evidence informed practices, as you can see on the screen here. So it always comes back to this: pedagogy matters most. And while pedagogy is definitely the driver for us, technology is the accelerator, as Michael Fullan said. But coming back then out of the classroom and back to a macro scale across our school is vastly important for us to make sure that we not only reflect on the journey so far as we chart it, but also consider the wake, as you can see in this image from the boat, behind the boat. It's massively important then to consider how our decisions are going to impact the rest of the stakeholders across our school. So if we were to change this image and look from a bird's eye view approach, okay, the wake will continue and it will carry on, okay, until it reaches the shoreline. So what impact do the ripples from your wake in your digital strategies have on your school community, is my question to you. I think it's hugely important to be mindful of your decisions. And if you need to alter your change of course at any time, it's important to consider how that change will actually impact on the stakeholders across your school. And will they be riding an appropriate wave from your wake? This was shared by Mark. I would thoroughly urge you to watch his keynote. It's an infographic on remote or hybrid learning success. I was lucky enough to create a course with him on exactly this matter. It's with the National College, so please do check that out. If you wish to contact Mark, you can find him on Twitter using his at ICT Evangelist, his handle, as you can see in the bottom corner there, or just simply get in touch with him via email at mark@ictevangelist.com. But if we just lament on this for a short period, I'm not sure I can do it the justice that Mark will, but as we look through here about successful learning, successful digital learning, it's hugely important that you have consistency across your school. You need that blended approach, synchronous and asynchronous, to ensure that you have equality. You need to ensure that there is ease of access for everybody, every stakeholder, whether that's from your admin staff all the way through to students, teachers, leaders across the school. You need the support of parents within there, and having them on board and clear discussions with them about what you're doing and why you're doing it is hugely important, so that we can support and fill in that triangulation of information between school, student and teacher. It's hugely important, of course, that you train staff and offer as much CPD as you can to reduce any anxiety that teachers may have, but to also foster and build competence and competency across the school with using different technologies. As is the mark of any school, measurement is also key, and measurement can take many different forms. And what you may decide to do is actually adjust your measurements as you go, because as we know, change management, nothing always goes quite as clearly as you may have expected it to. But reflection and measurement are two hugely important parts in any school, so that we know the gains that we've made, aligning with the strategy that we have set out across our school. And with that, we need to know attendance, and that's not necessarily solely student attendance, but that's also staff attendance. aligning with your school's digital strategy so that you can ensure ongoing success. So where does flexibility come in then? As you can see here, we have rubber bands, and we know if we stretch a rubber band to a certain point, it will snap. Okay, but rubber bands by nature tend to be fairly flexible, and I have a question to throw to the audience here now, which is how flexible is your approach in terms of all things digital in the school? Are you brittle? For example, the physicist in me can't help but use this as an analogy that the Challenger spacecraft that so famously exploded just after it had taken off, very sadly. If your approach to all things digital is not very flexible, then it's likely that there will come a tipping point where it will all come falling down. The farther end then of the spectrum would be being malleable. And as you can see here in the image coming through, that's the recent OSIRIS-REx sample being taken from the asteroid passing through our solar system. And that's a great example there of how lots of different people have worked together to ensure a successful outcome despite many challenges. Therefore proving a flexible or agile approach. So from us at BISAD, our school is hugely fortunate that we have had both a synchronous and an asynchronous approach to teaching and learning whilst digital, but we haven't negated all of the other things that make our school amazing, which is our BISAD diploma, so our wider curriculum offerings, and we've ensured that we have used technology to our advantage here through our strategic approach to make sure that we can still conduct house days, virtual CCAs, various challenges, service, which is heavily embedded in our school, because not only are they important to us, but they're important to the students' well-rounded education. And through our evidence-informed approach, we've ensured that technology has enabled us to continue all of those amazing parts of our school. And it's important to remember that no matter what you do and where you are, in terms of not only geographical location, but position within your career, we cannot forget that passion led us here. And we got into teaching because we are hugely keen to share not only the love of our subject, but also to improve outcomes for students. And within your digital strategy, I think it's important to be mindful of a flexible and equitable approach so that we can improve outcomes for students. I hope you found something in this presentation useful. Please do reach out to me if you would like to continue the conversation. Thank you for listening.
Contact Olly through the social media details and contact details he gave earlier, or through the networking system on our virtual event platform. This is one of many on-demand videos that you can watch at any time during the summit, as well as a full programme of live and keynote sessions and panel sessions throughout both days. Don't forget to connect with us on Twitter for the latest show updates. Follow us at Guess Education and use the hashtag GuessEdTech. We hope you enjoy the rest of the event.